I appreciate Senator Bakk standing with me here, and Representative Thiessen had a personal matter that he had to attend to and could not attend the meeting we just held, but was planning on it. I've concluded that after almost 3 months of futile efforts to reach an agreement that we can use to bring the legislature back in special session, and given that the different areas we have of disagreement remain what they were, essentially what they were at the end of the legislative session almost 3 months ago, that I'm not going to call a special session. I'm not going to pursue any further the attempts to knit together an agreement. Last Friday, when the Speaker and Majority Leader and I met, we were at exactly the same impasse that they were almost 3 months ago. And funding for the Southwest Light Rail, I'm not asking for state money, but asking for the authority for the federal government, for the local governments involved to put money into to underwrite that last remaining portion, and other areas that in terms of the transportation, the earmarking of transportation projects, which I know Representative Thiessen, who's not here, but I spoke with him last night, is a strong concern of his, and some other incidental matters, but those are the principal differences, and they remain. And so it's I think it's past the point now where we can have any more fruitful discussions. If you want to add anything.
Well, I mean, the only thing I guess I have to add is, we identified last Friday, I guess, 4 different options for the Speaker to consider. He wrote them down. I was hopeful he's going to come back today with some kind of a proposal, something, but came with nothing. So it just seems like we're not getting anywhere. And I've been in the legislature 22 years, and it is just amazing how the congestion has changed over that period of time. And I just kind of think down the road, what are these metro highways going to look like 20 years from now, unless we find some alternatives to get people off of the highways? And I think they're lacking vision. I think leaders have a responsibility to prepare the public for those kind of transitions down the road. I think they've decided to shirk that responsibility because it's hard, and sometimes leading is hard, but they're unwilling, I think, to take on the tough challenge. It's pretty unusual when the state's business community wants something, the labor community wants something, the local governments along the project want it. There is, near unanimous support among the affected parties to accomplish this project between Minneapolis and Eden Prairie. We did some polling recently. Over 60% of the people in Eden Prairie support it. But somehow we can't get there. And one of the alternatives that we offered was just allow these 5 metro counties to levy the same kind of sales tax that the 82 others can. 82 counties can levy 0.5% for transportation. My county, St. Louis, is one of them that's made a decision to do it. And they're investing a lot of money in our county roads and bridges. So I just find it hard to believe that we can't give these 5 counties just the same authority that everyone else has, but we just can't seem to get the Speaker or his caucus to get there. So their position hasn't changed from the last night of session, and they haven't made no kind of a counteroffer of any kind, even though we put a number of different alternatives on the table. So I don't see a path forward.
Let me just say also, I intend, beginning of the next legislative session, to put a tax bill. I can't say it'll be exactly the same, but it'll incorporate most of what's in the tax bill, and also the bonding bill, which will start with the projects that are where there's agreement between the House and the Senate the last night. And obviously the legislature will have its own prerogative from that point as to how it handles those 2 bills. But in terms of the bonding, in terms of this money being available to start the next beginning of the next construction season, a bill passed now would have almost about the same effect as a bill passed in January or early February. Glad to respond to questions.
Senator Bakk, can you tell us what some of those other options are that you put on the table that they would not consider?
Well, the Senate had one the last night, just allow Hennepin County or the rail authority to participate at a level higher than what's allowed in current law. Current law, a rail authority can only put 10% of the money into a project. The proposal the Senate passed the last night would have let Hennepin County put 20% into that project, all local money, no state funds. That was one that, frankly, I think looks pretty easy. Allowing them to levy the additional 0.25% like the other 82 counties can, I thought seemed pretty easy. So those are the two really kind of major pieces. The other one was a dissolution of CTIP, but we found out that Ramsey County, apparently, I heard from Ramsey County that they weren't interested in doing that. So that wasn't an option. And then there's the issue of certificates of participation that the governor or the Met Council could issue, but can't be done without an appropriation to the Met Council to backfill their budget. So it would have taken $6 to $10 million in an appropriation to the Met Council to provide the debt service for those certificates of participation. The Speaker's been unwilling to backfill the Met Council's budget so that it could have been done that way, and came with no alternative. So we're just kind of stuck in that they won't consider anything.
To both of you, does this help Democrats by not having a special session? Does this make it easier to elect Democratic majorities?
I don't know how to assess that. I haven't tried to assess that. I'll leave it to the 4 caucus leaders to give their views on that. But you know, I think both the tax bill and the bonding bill would be very beneficial to lots of Minnesotans. And that's my disappointment, that we couldn't get this worked out in a way that we could proceed with both and pass both and have them provide the tax relief and the new projects that will benefit thousands of Minnesotans.
Where does this leave Southwest Light Rail? Is the region going to be able to apply for federal funds come early?
I'm back to the drawing boards. You know, I haven't really spent any time focusing on what the alternative would be, because other than the ones that Senator Bakk outlined that would involve the legislature, because I just wanted to focus on this. I'm going to meet tomorrow with Chairman Dunnick and start the process of seeing what other options, if there are any, are available. I don't know.
Governor, one line of thought is that there's too much litigation wrapped up with that line right now, that it'd be better to wait until that's all cleared. That's what we've heard from some people on the other side of the aisle. What would you say to that?
I don't know the consequences of that. I couldn't give you an answer today. After I had the meeting tomorrow, that's the question I'll ask. I don't know the situation. And like Real ID, the federal government's position keeps evolving or changing, should we say? So I just don't know. But I do know that the longer it's delayed, the implementation, the cost keeps going up, as it has already. So it's.
Senator, how confident are you taking this this divide over light rail to the voters as you fight to maintain your majority?
Well, I think it really is in our caucus we've talked about it being a matter of fairness. I mean, the bonding bill has a lot of money for local roads and bridges that are largely rural. It has a lot of money for Highway 14, for Highway 23, for Highway 10, and going out Highway 12, all largely rural. But there really is nothing in the bill for the metropolitan area for transportation. And historically, we have always tried to balance money spent on transportation as closely as we can, rural and metro. And the bill is all rural. I mean, so I'm a rural guy, but the fact of life is, it's just not sustainable over the long haul to run the table because you happen to have the cards and you can run the table, because that pendulum swings back. So I do think a balanced proposal that addresses transportation needs in the metro area and the rural area is where our caucus is at. I think that they think that's a matter of fairness. It's the way we've always done it. And it's not unusual. I mean, we really look at higher education the same way. We try to spend the same kind of money in a bonding bill on MnSCU and on the University of Minnesota. There's a balance there. So, I just think for stability going forward, it's important to have balance between metro and rural needs.
Governor, there's a lot of bonding bill projects, obviously, that will not happen, at least not now. Will that have any immediate impact?
Well, the construction season now is pretty well behind us. There may be a couple there that could get started. I can't comment specifically, but again, I'll bring a bonding bill to the legislature next January and urge that it be passed and passed as quickly as possible so people can know that that money will be available beginning of the next construction season.
Would your bonding bill include transportation, or are you going to go back to your proposal for separate long-term transportation?
Well, I'm going to go back to my proposal for separate long-term transportation proposal because I'm really disappointed with the combination of that and the way this bill was approached for transportation. I think is really not in the best interest of Minnesota. The earmarking of bills of transportation projects, particular road projects by the legislature, I don't know if it's unprecedented, but it violates the professional rating system that MnDOT uses to insulate those decisions from politics. So now you have to have the right legislator in the right situation to specify this project. If this project gets done, then with the limited funding that's been made available, some other project or projects don't get done. So you can say, yeah, okay, we're going to play favorites here, but someone else loses out. And I can't remember the number of former committee chairs and MnDOT commissioners who sent a letter recently saying that this is a very, very bad precedent to set. So I'd probably go back and relook at that whole aspect of it. But the real solution is to have sufficiency in our transportation funding. If you've got scarcity, you're going to have people fighting over which projects are in and which ones are not. What's necessary is to have sufficiency so that everybody gets served over the next decade, and we have the kind of transportation system we need for a viable state economy.
Governor, any misgivings about vetoing the tax bill, knowing what you know now, that it's not going to happen?
Well, if there hadn't been a $100 million error, cost the state $100 million, I would have signed the bill. I mean, I've said that before. I mean, they couldn't in the last rush of the last minutes, they couldn't get the drafting correct. So, I regret that that's part of it. I said that from the beginning, this would have to be a whole package. And it wasn't my choice, not my choice that the tax bill had that kind of critical error, but it did. So, I've said all along that it's a combination of the bonding and the tax bills together.
Provisions in the tax bill that we're seeing as critical for the Major League Soccer Stadium in St. Paul. Is there any assurance you can give those investors that this will still happen?
Well, I can't guarantee you anything, but we'll bring that back as part of the tax bill I'll present to the legislature next January and urge that the legislature act on it as quickly as possible. Particularly matters where there is that time sensitivity, but I can't speak for the principals.
A couple of months ago, right after the session ended, you suggested that you would not hold the tax bill hostage, I think is the word that you used. Is there a reason why you wouldn't call a special session just for that tax bill?
Well, I'm not holding it hostage. I've said it's got to be part of the whole package. Just as Senator Bakk said, the Metro Trans has got to be part of the whole package. It's trying to bring everybody together and say, okay, compromise means you agree to things you don't agree with. And this is eminently agreeable. We're not asking for one state dollar going into the Southwest Light Rail project. It's just all about the politics. It's about putting something on some people's re-election brochures saying we killed Southwest Light Rail and the metropolitan dollars, boondoggle dollars and waste, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, the highways get more congested and there's no alternative being proposed. There's not an alternative route or alternative means of getting people. You got 12 CEOs of just about every major company in the Twin Cities that have signed a letter saying we support Southwest Light Rail, we support transit. The Twin West Chamber supports it. The cities that are affected by it have twice passed resolutions in support of it. So, and so we're saying just allow the counties to proceed, just allow it to happen. And, I want to play politics and say no, so that's too bad.
Speaking of politics, are you doing your road campaigning on this? For
I'm water quality is what I focus on today and intend to. I mean, I'm not, this is not a campaign issue for me. This is about what's best for Minnesota. What's best for the metropolitan area, I'm very clear, involves public transit projects. Southwest, maybe Botno, definitely the Orange Line, the one gateway coming in from the east to Metro. I mean, these are projects that are going to be essential if we're going to have an expanding economy in the metropolitan area, and if it benefits the metropolitan area, it benefits the whole state. Because everybody's county program aid, local government aid, school aid comes from a common pot of revenues this state has when there's economic vitality. Just whatever benefits Mankato or the Iron Range or Worthington benefits everyone else in Minnesota. It's us. It's all of us together. It's not about this division that's being created for political purposes.
Anything else? Okay,
you.
thank you all very much.
Next.
Rachel, I'm not as optimistic right now, for the record.
So sometimes you're not optimistic.
It just changed. Good afternoon, everyone. Obviously, we are disappointed. The bills that we had at the end of session were true compromise bills, both a tax bill and a bonding bill that would have put $550 million of tax relief into the pockets of middle-class Minnesotans and over $700 million of money into our road and bridge infrastructure. Those things are now not going to happen, unfortunately, because of Southwest Light Rail. And I respect the governor and I appreciate his position, but a few months ago he stood before you and told you he was not going to hold the tax bill hostage. And he just stood in front of you and held the tax bill hostage. I did ask him in the meeting if he would consider doing a special session, set aside the things we can't agree on, and let's be Minnesotan, let's be Minnesota nice, and let's focus on the things we can agree on. Let's get a session and just work on the things we can agree on. And the governor flat out said, no, we're not going to work on those things without Southwest Light Rail. I'll remind you that Southwest Light Rail is a very controversial project. There's two outstanding lawsuits. Even Chair Dunnick said in an email to the governor that the feds were not likely to fund Southwest Light Rail until that litigation had resolved itself. We think those are important factors. We think those Minnesotans should be heard, and we're not real happy with the process in how Southwest Light Rail has gotten here. There's been millions and millions of dollars spent, hundreds of millions of dollars spent without legislative approval, and unfortunately that's not the way these kinds of projects should work. It's going through the wrong neighborhoods. It's not going through neighborhoods that have low car ownership where you'd kind of expect the folks that actually need to ride the train. It's going through and will destroy parkland. It's skirting environmental review process. I could go on and on and on about the problems with Southwest Light Rail. But unfortunately, when I talk about Southwest Light Rail with the governor and Senator Bakk, they don't even want to talk about it. There's an assumption that Southwest Light Rail is just going to happen and that I need to get on board with it. Unfortunately, I think there's too many problems and flaws with Southwest Light Rail for us to put a stamp of approval on something that probably should not happen. And there's a large number of Minnesotans, including Democrats, who do not support Southwest Light Rail. So it's really unfortunate that all of the good things that we worked on and all of the agreement and compromise that was made is being cast aside because metro area Democrats aren't getting Southwest Light Rail. But I guess some good news for taxpayers and for folks that care about us spending our dollars effectively and efficiently. This probably is the end of Southwest Light Rail. And that's probably good news. And it doesn't mean it has to be the end forever, but it means that we should actually go back to the drawing board, start over, go through a new route analysis. Let's weigh it against improvements to our roads and bridges. Let's weigh it against bus rapid transit and other modes of transportation. And let's give it the thorough vetting that it really hasn't had up until this point. It's been kind of shepherded through. I've heard a ton of complaints from residents in these neighborhoods that have talked about how the process has been shortcut all along. And there's been an assumption by Met Council and others that this project would just happen, and it was time for folks to get on board. The train was leaving the station. Unfortunately, millions of dollars were spent and wasted in the process, and that is unfortunate. But we hope that they can return to the drawing board and come up with a plan that can gain more public support and can gain more support from the actual legislature. So, Senator Hann.
Well, I don't know if I have much to add. I think it is important to remember that the bonding bill, the transportation package, was passed by the House by a pretty broad bipartisan majority in the last night of session. The tax bill was passed by both bodies. A pension bill, there's some discussion about a pension bill, also passed. I think the Speaker is right. There was a lot of bipartisan agreement on a lot of these bills. The House, I think, did their work. It did get hung up in the Senate at the last minute with the Southwest amendment. And remember, this is an amendment that was brought at the very last minute, was never a bill, never got a hearing. There was a lot of questions at the time of that vote of what exactly that bill did. No one really understood the mechanism. I still am not sure what the mechanism is. I saw something today that said it's an increase in taxes on Hennepin County taxpayers. I'm not sure what tax that is. I don't understand the mechanism. I don't know if anybody does. It was an idea that I think Peter McLaughlin brought at the last minute at the legislature. I guess the question is this is how we commit to spend $2 billion, as we pass that kind of amendment at the last minute that has never been heard in a committee, never been vetted, never had an opportunity for questions, and never had come up before. I have questions about this process, but there is a lot of agreement, and it is disappointing that we can't proceed with the things that we do agree on, and there are many. Very strong bipartisan agreement on the bonding bill, on the tax bill, even on the pension bill. So I think it's a disappointment that there seems to be a hang-up on this, and a lot of it goes to the process that this project has been given in the last several years. It's a $2 billion public works project. We talk about the Viking Stadium being the biggest single public works project in Minnesota history. That was $500 million of public money. This is $2 billion of public money, and never had a hearing and vote in the legislature. This is not how we should do it. And I hope, and I mentioned this to Senator Bakk, if we're going to pursue this, we ought to have a bill, and we can do it next year, have bills, have hearings, have votes in committees on the issue itself, and answer the questions the Speaker has brought up. That's the way you do this, and I'm hoping we can get there.
Senator Hann, you represent Eden Prairie. What do your constituents say? Do they want Southwest Light Rail?
Well, no doubt some do. I'm a member of Twin West Chamber of Commerce. I have been for a dozen years. They do support it. The Minnesota Chamber has not supported the Southwest Rail project. I was endorsed today by Twin West Chamber of Commerce. I think they have more issues than just that one. I've been out doing a lot of door knocking the last several weeks. I hear more about the tax bill that didn't get passed than I've been hearing about Southwest Light Rail. So there's no question there are people who do, but I think, again, the things that people know about it are things that they have read in the paper or heard from advocates, but the questions that are not answered are the ones that people need to know. What is the long-term cost? Who's going to pay it? How are those taxes going to be raised? Who's on the hook to do this? What is the effect of this going to be? What is the real impact? Senator Bakk talked about congestion. We all are concerned about that. We put in a green line between downtown Minneapolis, downtown St. Paul. I don't know about you. Anybody driven 94 between the two cities recently? Has the traffic gotten a lot better? I think that if you're going to make that argument, I think you have to have some pretty substantial evidence that that does make a difference with congestion. It's a lot of money, and I think there does need to be a fair public hearing and public decision-making, votes taken by elected representatives who are authorized to raise and spend the public money. That has not happened in this case. It can happen, it should happen, and I hope we can get to that.
I'll just clarify too that the governor made a comment about they're not asking for state money, and never along the process did anybody answer my concern about the ongoing operating costs. $39 million a year is what the projected ongoing operating costs. That's the subsidy over and above the fare box collection of what it will cost to operate Southwest Light Rail for 1 year, $39 million, half of which is state money, half of which is local money. And I'm sorry, but we can't commit the state to a capital upfront expenditure without knowing where and how that ongoing operating expense would be paid for, and whether it makes sense to do that. And frankly, if you think it's a good idea to spend $136 million up front, for Southwest Light Rail, without taking a look at how much that ongoing operating cost is absolutely dereliction of duty. It is a very inefficient way of moving people, and you know, I've spent a lot of time talking to folks around the state about the subsidy on the North Star rail and how much we're paying for every single commuter into and out of Minneapolis every day. Uber would be cheaper. I literally lay out a scenario that says we could lease a brand new Mercedes-Benz for every person that rides North Star, pay for all of their gas, and still have money left over. That's how inefficient moving people by rail is. The great flexibility of rail is that if the need moves, we can simply just pull up those tracks and move them to another corridor, right? No, that was supposed to be, you can laugh along. It just doesn't make sense, and that's where you get a lot more flexibility and a lot more bang for your buck with projects like the Orange Line, the bus rapid transit. If need moves, you can change the project. Yesterday, CTIB met. If this isn't on your radar yet, it should be. CTIB is the County Transit Improvement Board, made up of 5 counties. They did not fully fund the Orange Line, which heads down to the South Metro. Orange Line is a bus rapid transit, very efficient and has broad bipartisan support. They were not willing to fully fund that project out of CTIB. The state is willing to, and it has broad bipartisan support. But they moved forward full steam ahead with the Bottineau Light Rail Line project. They authorized $463 million of expenditures without knowing whether the state will put up its 10% share. CTIB will start spending money on Bottineau in September at the tune of $2 million a month. And they still don't know if the state supports that rail line. So what we have is the tail wagging the dog, and local governments moving forward without knowing if their partners are on board. And we would strongly recommend that they do not do that, and they involve the legislature. We actually have public hearings on these projects before they start spending $2 million a month on them. So, questions?
Mr. Speaker, so all the hearings they had as part of the design of this line, the public hearings, those have no bearing on the process here at the Capitol?
Well, you know, I'll remind you that when Democrats had complete control of state government, they appropriated $30-some million towards Southwest Light Rail. The governor signed a bill last year canceling $29 million of that. So I thought that sent a message. I thought we took a position when we canceled the money for Southwest Light Rail. Why did we do that? Because it was a controversial project at the time, and even the folks that supported it couldn't agree. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed in the last year. They're still on the same route. They're still in the same corridor. You still have pending outstanding lawsuits. So I don't know what changed from 2015 when the governor signed a bill canceling an appropriation for $29 million for Southwest Light Rail, and today. I understand he still wants it, but none of the other factors have changed.
Will it be disappointing for your constituents that there's not tax cuts in the election year?
You know, I think Minnesotans from all over the state are going to be disappointed that there isn't tax relief and that there isn't road and bridge money for the entire state. And I think it's absolutely unfortunate and wrong for the governor and Democrats in the legislature to hold up funding for those programs, which we all agree upon, to try to get something that's controversial. And frankly, I think that's what frustrates Minnesotans about how St. Paul works. We shouldn't have amendments offered in the last 30 seconds or minute or two of the session that potentially spend, you know, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars ongoing. And we shouldn't hold those things hostage to get a project that we want when that project on its own can't gain broad support in the legislature. What I'm seeing here is frankly sandbox politics, not leadership. And it's time to stop acting like children, and we shouldn't throw our sucker in the dirt and walk away. Let's work on what Minnesotans sent us here to do. Let's work on what we can agree upon. Our caucus was elected 2 years ago into the majority to be a check and a balance on the governor's agenda. We're doing that here. We're saying, you know what, we think we should at least have public hearings on this project before we appropriate $136 million or encumber the state to an ongoing operating expense of $20 or $39 million every year. We think that makes sense. We think a little more time, a little more thought, and a little more careful process is good. And I think there's a lot of folks, including the folks that send me emails every day and the folks that are backing 2 lawsuits trying to stop Southwest Light Rail from happening. We need to step back and do this right. And frankly, I think the governor needs to show some leadership and say, yes, let's work on what we can agree on instead of casting all that aside because I can't get what I want on Southwest Light Rail. Other questions?
Did you propose calling a special session just for the tax bill?
You know, I did tell the governor, I did ask the governor, Governor, please call a special session for the things we can agree upon, the tax bill and the bonding bill.
I said just the tax bill.
Yeah, and then after he said no, I said, Governor, you literally said a few months ago that you wouldn't hold the tax bill hostage, and you're doing exactly that. And he gave me an answer similar to what he gave you. But unfortunately, he's breaking his word. The governor is holding the tax bill hostage, and that tax bill has broad support from not only the public, but from both sides of the aisle here in St. Paul. And I think Minnesotans want it and need it. So it's really unfortunate that he is holding the tax bill hostage to get Southwest Light Rail, when he promised Minnesotans he wouldn't do that. And that's the part that I think the governor's going to have some trust issues with Minnesotans on.
Mr. Speaker, any concern about the millions that have already been spent on Southwest Light Rail and the cost that will continue to go up by millions each year if it happens in what some people view as inevitably it does happen?
Well, I said the last time I briefed the press that I thought that they were going to try to go around the legislature. Now, they really can't or shouldn't. It doesn't mean they won't try. It is in statute that this project, 10% of it needs to come from the state. So the state is a partner in this project, and 50% from the feds. So we're a 20% partner just locally here in Minnesota. And frankly, I believe that proceeding and spending all of those dollars without knowing that all of your partners are on board was the wrong approach. And I'm really sad to see that they're starting to do the same thing on Botno. Do I think the project is inevitable? No, I think it's done. I think Southwest Light Rail is dead. Doesn't mean it won't happen in the future, but I think they have to go back to the drawing board now. And I think maybe they understand that they should have done a better process getting the legislature involved and on board and really getting Minnesotans to back the project. A project that has broad support doesn't have 2 outstanding lawsuits and all of the controversy that this project has. So it's not just me that thinks this project's controversial. It's more than half of the House of Representatives, and I think way more than half of Minnesotans don't agree with this project. So what I think Minnesotans do agree with is the $550 million of tax relief and the $1 billion bonding bill that would spend $700 million on road and bridge infrastructure all across the state. I think the folks that drive Highway 12, which is the most dangerous stretch of highway in the state of Minnesota, are going to be mad that highway isn't getting fixed. And if people's lives are lost on that stretch of road, I think it'll be an absolute shame. And I hope that they don't think that they can continue to try to find a way around the legislature. The statute is very clear. It requires a 10% match, and that's the legislature's way of having a say in whether or not the line happens.
If you lose the majority in the November elections and Democrats control the Senate, House, and the governor's office, is it no longer dead?
Frankly, politics hasn't played into my decisions on whether or not to proceed, and I certainly hope that the governor, that it didn't play into his, and I know he said it didn't, but unfortunately when I think about what the alternative is, I think it did. Because the alternative was passing the tax bill and the bonding bill without Southwest Light Rail. So what it tells me is that the governor doesn't want $700 million of road and bridge money. He doesn't want to fix Highway 12. He doesn't want to fix Highway 10 and 23 and 14. That he cares that if he can't have Southwest Light Rail, he doesn't want to fund all those other things, that those weren't priorities. So I think the easier thing for me to believe is that politics came into this from the governor's perspective, and I think that's too bad.
But would it likely be resurrected if Democrats control everything?
You know, they controlled everything 2 years ago and they didn't move forward on this. I had said, you know, they came to us and said, we have to pass a gas tax now. Well, my response to them was, why didn't you do it when you had complete control of state government? The answer was very simple. It's not popular with the public, just like Southwest Light Rail. So my hope is that Minnesotans reach out to the governor and to Democrats and say, you know what, drop your boondoggle project and let's get on with the operation of the state. Let's get on with funding $700 million of road and bridge projects. Let's get on with $550 million of tax relief that Minnesotans expect and need. Let's do those things. To me, that's Minnesotan, and to me, that's leadership.
The governor said that he'll offer a bonding bill next year. If you're speaker, could you imagine supporting a bonding bill?
Well, because I've read the Constitution, I know that bonding bills have to originate in the House, and I think that's why we've had some of the conversations this year that we have had. I appreciate the governor saying that he will support a bonding bill that looks much like this one with the same projects in it, although he said he would not, I think he said he would not support the transportation component. You know, I got to tell you, I think these are going to be tough issues for Democrats on the campaign trail this fall. Speaker Thiessen, or former Speaker, current Minority Leader Thiessen, issued a letter saying that he would not support a special session if we had funding in it for Highway 23, if we had funding for Highway 14, if we had funding for Highway 12 and Highway 10. Okay. I mean, we didn't put those projects in there for political reasons. Most of them don't fit in a district that we even, you know, politically care about. But to say that that you won't support a special session if we fund those projects, to me, is outrageous. You know, and likewise, you know, the governor's not on the ballot this fall, but I think Minnesotans can see very clearly why we're not getting $700 million of road and bridge money and $550 million worth of tax relief, and it's because the governor and Metro Democrats aren't getting Southwest Light Rail, period.
Next year on bonding bill?
Yeah.
Could you support a bonding bill like the one that you had this year?
I'm also not the one walking away from the table right now. I'll meet with the governor tomorrow or next week. And I'll continue to work for what I know is right and good for Minnesotans, which is to pass a bonding bill and a tax bill. I'll do it now, I'll do it in a week, I'll do it in a month, and I'll do it at the beginning of next session. Because I think that's what's right for Minnesota. Democrats are the ones walking away from the table today, and they're doing it very clearly because they're not getting Southwest Light Rail, and unfortunately that's wrong.
As you're trying to get your representatives reelected and increase your majority, do you feel any kind of a Trump impact on making that more of a difficult job, or about the same? No impact?
You know, I think Minnesotans elected us for a few different reasons. Number one, I think they wanted there to be a check and balance on the governor's agenda. I think Minnesota has a rich tradition of divided government, and they think that you know, these issues should be debated and considered and passed, and things that can pass in a bipartisan manner are broadly supported in the state. So I think folks you know, that was one of the reasons we were elected. I think one of the other reasons was I think folks thought that the Democratic Party has kind of left greater Minnesota behind, not only the economy, but just kind of forgotten about the ag industry and, you know, many things, the mining and many things related to jobs and families and people in greater Minnesota. Most of our majorities were gained out in greater Minnesota, and we're going to be defending a majority that was built. You know, 10 of the 11 seats we won were out in greater Minnesota. So Southwest Light Rail, you know, folks out in those districts, what they want is $700 million of road and bridge money and $550 million of tax relief. They could care less about Southwest Light Rail.
Well, would you attend the event tomorrow night when your Republican nominee is in town?
I will not be there.
Will you be attending?
I've got a previous commitment, I'm not going to
You supporting him for president?
be. Am I supporting him for president?
Yes.
Well, I can tell you what I'm not. I'm not supporting Hillary Clinton. I'll tell you that.
So you're not supporting Donald Trump?
I'm not supporting Hillary Clinton. I think for all the problems that Trump has, he's not a criminal, and I can't support her. But
And Hillary's a criminal.
well, I think she's done some things that raise real questions.
Mr. Speaker, are you voting for Donald Trump?
I will be voting Republican in the fall. I'll make that decision when I walk into the voting booth, but I will not be at his event tomorrow night. And you know what? I'm committed to 100% to the job that I was elected to do here in the state, which is make sure that Minnesotans have a voice of compromise in the legislature, and prior to our election, they didn't have that. So I think Minnesotans appreciate bipartisanship and compromise, and I think that's what we're going to represent, and why I think Minnesotans are going to reelect us. And that's what we're going to be talking about up to the election.
Are you not going because you have a prior commitment, or because you just don't agree with Donald Trump at this point and support it?
I'm just not going. I got better stuff to do. You know what? I'm just not engaged in the presidential race. I got better stuff to do. So, thank you so much.